Okay, so today we have Rebecca Snyder, who is, I have to look at my sheet, talking about AI-based writing assignments for any disciplines. I'm going to hand it over to you, Rebecca, and thank you very much for being here with us.
Well, thank you. This is really just my assignment. I know AI is so new that it's hard to know what to do for our students and how to use it in the classroom in an ethical way. And so when in the English department, which is my discipline, as we were starting this conversation, I realized that even though I don't want my students necessarily using it to produce writing, it's still a really useful tool for them to learn about critical thinking. And so that's what this assignment is. I'm going to go ahead and share screen here if I can remember how to do that on the new one. Here we go. I put this in a Word document. Oops. There we go. Um,
There we go.
yeah, sorry, it's really odd on my end. Let me see if I'm on the right screen. Yeah. I put this in a Word document rather than a PowerPoint so that I could forward it to you. And you could have all the materials from my class. I just put it all together. So it's not a fancy presentation, but it has all the content in it in a way that I think is useful for instructors. So essentially what I do is this, and I'm going to go into each one of these. These each have little breakouts on them. Um, I have students write about a topic. The sample topic I'm going to be using that I've used in the past is uh, a response to Javier Zamora's book Salido, which was about his own account of being an unaccompanied minor coming to the United States. But this can work about, I think, with any topic. So you'll see that example, but I'm not advocating for one specific example. Have students write about a topic and then have AI write an essay utilizing the exact same prompt, essentially. Write about the same topic. Then assign an essay or a project that requires students to analyze the quality of that AI essay. That's going to mean that you have to do a lecture on AI, that you have to do a lecture on how you want them to look at the AI essay, right? You have to tell them how they're supposed to analyze it. And then I think the real value is in the assignments that they do, that they evaluate the sources that the AI used, they evaluate the AI's language. And then I'll talk a little bit about one of the major concerns that I have doing this assignment. So that's the overview. I'm going to show you the assignment of the AI essay and all of that as we go along. And feel free to interrupt and ask any questions too. So writing about the assignment. I have them write about the topic first. I don't know that this is mandatory, but I find that if I have them write about the topic first, that they develop their own understanding of the issue, that they do their own research, they do their own unique and individual research rather than just pulling from the AI. And because it's often a controversial topic, they have an unbiased response to that topic. And this also gives you a sample essay of their own thinking about this topic, which I think is really key. You want to let them have a chance to respond before they see the AI's response, because you're going to see later, there's an opportunity for them to compare their own writing to what the AI produced. And with a little bit of education, this is going to be a little bit of a confidence builder about using AI as a tool, but not letting it replace their own writing. You can skip this step, I think. It's not necessary. This is a writing class, so having them do a lot of writing is really normal. But I would do something to engage them on the topic prior to showing them the AI-generated essay. You could also choose to provide them with the research that the AI uses before you show them, sorry about that, before you show them the AI essay, so that way they're using the same research. Hang on, let me pause while this finishes for a second. Sorry about that. I've put my prompt in here. My prompt is generally just conduct research around a topic. Like I have them read a book and then respond to that. There'll be lectures on how to make a claim of policy, how to solve problems. I'll have done lectures on all of these things, but it's a really open topic. And I think that that's helpful because then they can see the ideas that they would have generated, but they would have thought was an interesting response or thoughtful response or useful response to the topic prior to showing them the AI. And I think that's about it, that for that. Okay, utilizing the exact same prompt. And this turns out, and I encourage you at this point, like if you're following along, go and you have Copilot or you have ChatGPT, I don't think it matters what tool you're using. Go and get one of your assignments and see if you can get AI to generate a decent essay on that topic or decent writing on that topic. It is shockingly difficult to get AI to do anything of value on an essay. So the students who are generating quality essays out of AI and submitting them there as their own work have probably done a significant amount of work on prompt engineering to get a decent essay out of it. It is incredibly hard, and I'll show you the essay that I got, but it took a few hours of prompting and reprompting and going away from it and thinking about what I needed to ask it and coming back to force it into an essay that I even wanted to show my students. And so it was shockingly difficult to get a good essay. So what I suspect the students are doing is sort of interacting with the AI when they do use it. They're interacting with the AI in a bit of a back and forth, knowing that it doesn't have good ideas. If they have a fairly decent quality product, they're doing some of the work. And maybe that's a lesson for them that they should just trust their own work more than the amount of work that goes into this is significant. They could have just put it into an essay. It also lied about my sources for about an hour and a half. I could not get it to use real sources. I finally managed to get one essay produced that was 2 pages long with real sources. It's a 6-page assignment. Now, I toyed with the idea of letting the students do this step themselves and everyone generating their own essay through AI, but I was a little worried that I was going to teach them how to use AI. And so I felt like that wasn't a good idea. And the other problem was I wanted everybody looking at the exact same essay when we analyzed it. I also didn't want them seeing how much I'd done to sort of push it in a certain direction. So you could do that if you were wanting them to learn how difficult it is, but then you're teaching them actually how to do the difficult thing better instead of how to do their own writing better. So I would advocate for just generating one yourself. But it is really interesting to do that exercise and see if you can get it to produce your essay for you. It's good at short things, but it's not great at long things. I would, this happened by happenstance, but I was glad that the essay it produced matched the opinions of most of the people in the class. Because what I was going to go on and have them do is analyze the logic and the quality of the arguments. And it turned out to be really beneficial to have the AI write an essay that agreed with them. And so that aligned with their opinions. So the majority of the class felt that laws surrounding unaccompanied minors at the borders were needed reform and that more attention needed to be paid to this issue. And so the AI agreed and developed an essay like that. And that left the students having written an essay on the same exact opinion from the same standpoint, and they could really compare apples to apples between their essay and the AI essay. So that was sort of a lucky thing on my part, but I would do that again on purpose. At that point, I assign an essay or a project that requires the students to analyze the essay. And I've left my little prompts in here. I'm going to go over them in a little bit more detail, but I'm just showing you that it's in here. And so then I would give them the prompt, and then I give them a lecture about AI. Now, I don't have a lecture PowerPoint to give you. So what I've given you is the one that I generated when I was trying to generate this first lecture. I used AI to develop a lecture on AI and had it give me an outline for this lecture. And it hit some really good points. And I kind of highlighted a few here. Artificial intelligence, and this is what the students really need to get, are these things here: how they're developed and ethical considerations. And it's worthwhile spending a lot of time on these. And I've generated this lecture a few different times, and it almost does the exact same thing. They're large. I like to cover that they're large language models that are trained on texts that are from books, websites, research papers, and other public content. And so I like to say to them, this is basically based on the collective wisdom of the internet. And you need to be aware the internet is full of, books, research papers, and garbage, a lot of garbage. And you need to be really careful as a result of that. I cover that it's not thinking. It's not doing thinking or critical thinking. It does not understand. It only does pattern recognition, not analysis. Hopefully some of you have seen the sort of viral video of the guy trying to get the AI to spell strawberry, to say how many R's there are in strawberry. Like, that's exactly what you're dealing with. It cannot actually see the letters. And so, and you would think it would, so it's even poor in that instance at pattern recognition. And it says AI doesn't understand like humans, but predicts what comes next. So it's just following the most common train of thought. It's not saying anything unique. And if there are things in the chat, oh, sorry. Let me know, Lori, if there's things in the chat. I don't see it very well.
Yeah, I just said that they're working on fixing the strawberry issue. So David talked about that this morning. It was really interesting.
Yeah, the last time I looked, it has strawberry right now, but man, that was just an illustration of how frustrating it is. And then I talk about this a lot, that there are ethical implications and bias in training the data and ensuring accurate representations. I know that when I first used it, I showed them some pictures that I generated from the very early usages. I could get the AI to generate images of professors were always white men. If I said history professor, it was always a white man. And then I said, can you make the professor black? And they were like, maybe. I could get it sometimes. And then I said, can you make the professor a black woman? And it was like I broke the internet. And so I give them that example because you have to really be aware of the racial bias that is built in when you're pulling information from the collective wisdom of the internet. There's going to be some stuff in there, and I'll talk about that in a bit more. It also mentions that it doesn't conduct original research. It regurgitates learned data, but doesn't search the internet or access databases in real time. And that is the most noticeable thing for my students when they go to do this assignment. And so I'll show you a couple of examples in the essay in a minute. It doesn't cite recent sources or original research, and it has no personal insight, a little bit of repetition. It says it can improve fluency, structure, and clarity of writing. I'm going to talk about that. Yes, maybe, but also it eliminates some of the originality in writing. And so it gives itself a little bit of praise for that, but I'm not sure that that's as much a benefit as we like to think it is. No critical thinking and misrepresentation of facts is frequent. It still hallucinates quite a bit. So I go over all of this. Oh, and over-reliance weakens writing skills. I appreciate that it put that in there for me. So it mentions that. Um, I make sure that I do an elaborate lecture on that. I show them some demonstrations. I run the screen in front of the classroom when I'm doing this in person, and I do some demonstrations and I let them ask me questions and try to get it to do this, try and get it to do that. I have the paid version of ChatGPT, so that's the most advanced thing that might be available to students right now. And I'm like, look at what's happening. It's not really doing what you think it can do. And then, so once I get through that, they sort of understand what AI is, the limitations of AI, what it can and cannot do. Oops, excuse me. At that point, I provide a lecture on the lens that I want the students to look at through. Now, I'm teaching an English class. So what I want them to look at is the use of logic and argumentation skills in an essay. I want them to recognize when people are committing logical fallacies. I want them to understand what type of logic they're using and if their sources are good quality sources. I want them to understand all of that. Other things you might do is a rubric. And so this is the point, like this lecture is what you want them to learn. The takeaway, aside from the takeaway about AI and sort of information literacy, this is where you interject your course content into the writing thing. For me, this is where I insert a discussion of logic, of deductive versus inductive reasoning, a discussion of ethos, logos, pathos, types of claims. I put an emphasis on logical fallacies because they always enjoy that and they can find a few in the essay. That's my course content that I'm working into this assignment. But I can imagine other disciplines that trying to imagine what would be appropriate for your discipline. What you want to think about maybe is what the internet might misrepresent about your discipline. And so think about like in criminology and poli-sci, so much is dependent on our love for detective fiction shows, right? True crime stories. Our understanding of criminology is based on media. And so the internet's going to anything that the AI produces is going to bias towards that pop culture understanding of political science and of criminology. Art, you're going to get incredibly generic summaries of what a piece of artwork looks like, or just a history. And so wherever the internet is weak, that is where AI is likely to be weak. And so whatever content that you want to sort of give to your students that shows a division between the internet and what you want them to learn that's a little bit above and beyond, that's the thing that you might want to target. But I do think it's extremely useful to have them analyze an essay or whatever they produce for poor arguments and poor representations of your discipline. And then I love this assignment. The AI will produce, and I'm going to, I should have done a different kind of share screen. Let me do this. I'm going to stop share for a second and reshare. Where'd it go? There we go. Okay. This is the essay that the AI produced, and it has this works cited page on it. It took forever to get it to be real sources. If I were to click on any of these, they do not take you to the original real sources. They are real sources, however. They're real articles that exist in the real world, but none of the links work, even though the AI confidently linked me to them. Some of these go to the original website. I think that one does, but most of them don't even do that. Oops. I made sure that it had real sources because I wanted them to do what an annotated bibliography. So this is a required assignment in English 1A at Reedley College. And it essentially has the students read the articles, either do original research, or in this case, I've given them the names of 5 articles. and do a very formalized summary of those articles and often an evaluation of those. And in my document, there's a quick outline of the elements of those, but I'd be happy to share those in another. If you email me, I'd be happy to share my lecture on that. I tell them, here are your 5 articles. You need to do an annotated bibliography on this. That requires them to read those articles. And then it requires them to know the content in comparison to how the AI uses it. I don't give them links to the articles. I make them find it. So it also helps develop their library research skills because the AI has given them poor quality links. And so they go through and they have to write in the annotated bibliography. They have to write about the quality of the authors. If these are good authors who are experts in this, who are they? That they talk about the ethos of the authors. They have to summarize the source, not just an overall summary, but also giving a summary of the main points and evidence. It's about 3/4 of a page long. And then I have them evaluate the quality of the source and talk about how it uses logic and which arguments are really good in the source. So that is for this one, that's about a 5-page paper in and of itself. But now they've read fairly deeply into this topic, where even before they might not have. Even though they've written on it themselves, they've now read 5 additional sources on this topic. And they're getting pretty expert on the language and the ideas around the topic at this point. This has a couple of benefits. They'll notice that the articles are misrepresented in the AI essay. They're actually, this is the thing that they're the best at, is knowing that what's in those sources and that it doesn't match what's in the AI essay. As AI admitted, it doesn't read the source. It's just predictive text. So it took the title and it kind of predicted what it was about, or it took the little subtitle in the summary that was available to it and it predicted what it was about. It's close, but it's not accurate. And so they'll notice that almost immediately. They will, if you require students to do a works cited or a bibliography, they will have a lot more empathy for you and notes that you tell them that they aren't doing it correctly, because they have a heck of a time finding these articles with a very poor works cited that the AI provided them with. So that's a nice little added benefit. And then one of the things I want to say is I think that you could almost stop here. At this point, you could really stop and say, let's just look at the sources the AI used and how it used it. And I think in a lot of ways, that's where the biggest benefit of this assignment comes from. The annotated bibliography is one of my favorite assignments. I wish that more disciplines did it. And it's one of the best ways that you can illustrate the difference between what human beings are capable of and what AI is capable of, because it cannot read. It does not read the articles and it does not understand. And it is reproducing very clean looking language, but not language that truly reflects the content of the article. And so this is really the place that if you only wanted to go this far, it would be a really good assignment. And annotated bibliographies are one of the best assignments you can give. But if you want to go on, have them evaluate the essay. So then I have the students write an essay about an essay, which for them is it just absolutely blows their mind. I saw that Deb came on. I can't see you, Deb, but the Reading and Writing Center tutors have an absolute meltdown with me the second I give this assignment, because this is just a bridge too far for a lot of them. They are to read an essay and then write an essay about the essay is just like so I spend a lot of time, and the Reading Writing Center tutors, bless their hearts, power through with me and get them to write this essay. Most of them actually finish it. Those who've hung in through the second essay usually finish this essay. I have very few who get knocked out by this one who were already passing the class. Not that they were happy with me, but they do make it through. And this tends to be some of the best essays that I get, because once they understand it, they start really being able to talk about writing in a critical way. And so it does take a while, and you have to devote a lot of effort to getting them to understand the sort of metacognitive thinking that you have to put into this. But once they get it, they usually get it really well. And the one that they all seem to understand is the misrepresentation of the sources. They're really good at that piece, but they do pick up on some other things, and I'll show you the common things in a second that they pick through in my essay. Even if you don't make them actually write about it, this is a really good class discussion to have, and go through and pick through what the AI essay produced, and ask them to analyze it through the lens of whatever your assignment is. You know, is it misrepresenting something? Is it oversimplifying? The generalizations, I talk a lot about logical fallacies, and it over relies on emotional appeals, which is strange because it's a computer. So it's very odd that the AI over relies on emotion, but it does, and it does consistently make emotional appeals. And it also relies heavily on generalizations. And so let me show you, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to share a screen without losing view of all of you. So I'm switching back and forth. Let me show you what my students pick up on in the essay. The types of things that they see. First of all, almost every AI produced essay has these weird headers. And I don't know why it can't get over that, but it doesn't. My students who try to misrepresent AI work as their own will know to delete them out, but you'll still see sort of this element of sections. You'll also see a little bit of this duplicative thesis statement, and they notice this because I talk to them about, you have one thesis statement, it comes near the end of your introduction. And in the AI essay, it almost introduces it with a thesis, and then it'll say, here's your thesis. And those are two slightly different things. They also notice, because I've drilled it into them, formatting errors. They get really irritated that it has formatting errors, and I feel like that also gives me a little more heft in my argument. Now, it writes a good thesis. This is not a bad thesis statement. However, none of that is actually covered in the essay. And this is something where my rubric comes in really handy. I let them look at this in the context of my rubric as well, and ask them, is this a well-written essay? And they're like, no, it doesn't. Like, I'm getting that comment every time that my thesis doesn't match my essay, and here the AI is writing one where it doesn't match the essay. I'd lose 10 points on my essay. So its thesis is that there's an urgent need for comprehensive policy reform to ensure the safety, well-being, and rights of these unaccompanied minors, to ensure that they are adequately protected and respected. This whole section is really an emotional appeal that the unaccompanied minor issue is important. It doesn't get into, it says that it's a growing problem, but it doesn't really say how much it's growing. It doesn't provide any statistics. And both of these quotations are massive mischaracterizations of what's actually in those articles. And they aren't quoted, actually. It's incapable of quoting. And if it puts quotes around something, it is almost certainly a lie that that's an exact quotation. And they'll pick up on that too. And so a lot of my students who are writing about this will spend a lot of time on this paragraph comparing what AI said the article said to what the article actually says, and then talking about how that's, you know, a misuse of sources. Notice that there's nothing about policy. That was the thesis. It says it's going to talk about policy, but this entire essay is really just about why it's an important issue, with a lot of lies about why it's an important issue. And then it gets into Solido. This isn't terrible, but it's also not specific. And it becomes pretty apparent, like it reads a lot like a student who didn't read the book, who maybe read the Spark Notes or whatever of the book. And I'm sure that's where it's getting it from, is Spark Notes, right? It's getting it from those publicly accessible elements. For a long time, it was saying this was a poem because Zamora is better known as a poet until this book came out. And so for a lot of the discussion, it was, a lot of the drafts had him as a poet and this not as a novel. But it doesn't read with any specificity. And of course, they've read the book. And so they know that there are all these interesting stories and much more specific information. They know that exploitation isn't exactly something he encounters, but corruption is. And they're upset that this book that they poured time and effort into is being misrepresented. They pick up on the fact, again, that the harsh realities of migration, that there's no policy discussions in here, and that this is almost the same content as the previous. Now it gets a little bit into, it'll name topics, it'll talk about environmental conditions, it'll talk about age-appropriate food. It has a few things mentioned in here. Those things probably appeared in the abstract of this article, but none of it's specific to any policy changes. Again, it's formatting incorrectly. And again, it's this is an incredibly, they're also upset by this because this is a really useful source. They all say, I wish I had this for my paper when I wrote it. And they were irritated that it was reduced down to this because it did have a massive breakdown of every single policy that this group thought needed change. And yet here it is in this paragraph with just barely summary. Some people, another underutilized source, they've only discussed one policy through the whole thing. Some students feel that there's a political bias in the way that the Trump administration is characterized and President Biden's administration is characterized. That critique does appear in that article, but it lacks the nuance in this coverage of it. So they talk about that in here. And then there's just so much of the language. I'll usually get a paragraph from students on the language that the AI uses being very emotional, and they'll pull out words like poignant to explain that. And so those are the things that they are actually capable, without much help from me, of picking up on in this analysis. And then finally, I want to just share one concern. A lot of people, let me find this. A lot of people talk about the benefits of AI. And I know I've heard people talk about that it helps clean up their language. And a lot of students use Grammarly. And I know that that is something that students can do. And there are some AI tools like spell check in Microsoft Word as an AI that instructors find acceptable. And there are some, a lot of in our English department are saying not to use Grammarly because it goes too far. I did spend some time in this unit trying to educate students about why I don't want them overusing this to clean up their language. They will, when they read the AI essay, recognize that AI writes sentences better than they do, but it writes it in a very generic way. And so I should back up and say, when they do compare their essay to the AI essay, that's the only piece that they think that the AI did better in the end. They recognize that their ideas are better, just maybe poorly expressed, but they will hold on to this idea that the language was better in the AI. And don't like to reinforce that idea. And so if you do this, this is something to just think about how you're going to handle it. AI makes language use generic. When I asked AI where it pulled its language from, it gave me an elaborate explanation, but the concern is sort of boiled down to this sentence. The majority of the training data comes from publicly available texts online. There's a cultural bias towards Western English-speaking cultures, especially American and British. This means the ways of framing arguments, referencing sources, and even discussing cultural issues often reflect these dominant perspectives. And I know that when I get AI written texts, it lacks the originality. It might be clean, the commas might all be in the right place, but it lacks the original thinking and the inventiveness that I used to see in my students. And so if you do this assignment, I hope that you really emphasize that, because they will see a cleaner draft and they will think that that at least is a way to use it. But I really even want them using that element with a lot of caution. So that's my spiel. That's my assignment. I went really fast. Are there any questions? I hope I didn't talk when you had questions.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I don't teach English, I teach Spanish and French, and especially for online classes, it's tricky when you have students write in other languages. And I mean, I know they're using AI. But what I try to do is just I focus on the vocabulary and grammar structures that we're using, because if they're submitting things that are just so eloquent and so, I mean, it's just so obvious that when they're using AI, but it's tough, it's tough. And I mean, that's all I can do, just focus on what we're studying. And I said, I mean, if it's too advanced, the structure too advanced, it's clearly not, it's not their work. So, I guess I'm sure that's the same thing that it's happening in English.
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to chime in here. This is just so on point as far as demonstrating why we need to build in AI literacy as part of all of our courses. This is really good job, Rebecca, because I've been talking about that to the tutors too, and everybody over here, they're undergrad students, right? And they're all like, AI. They don't want to be the ones. And yet we have students who come in here and have used it, and then they're like, oh, what do I do? And well, immediately we have to tell the professor, well, yes, we do, but first we need to figure out, you need to figure out what is it that has you going, it's AI. Okay, what have you recognized? Well, then come get me. And then we need to tell the student, this does not look like what we've seen of your writing before, and just ask them straight up, have you used a tool to help you? And I know Grammarly does incredibly detailed and beautifully rewritten things, and that's why some of our faculty don't want it, because it takes away that student's real sentence structure, and that's what we're trying to get them to give us, is their sentence structure. And anyway, this to me is just like encapsulated that whole idea of a unit on AI literacy that they get, so they understand from the get-go what it's helpful for and what it's not, and why we can tell when they do it. We don't really need any other tools because it can't do the things we're asking them to do. It cannot cite our content. It cannot cite sources. It doesn't have access, and they need to understand, they need to see it. And you've given them an opportunity to see that. And so I think that's just great. Thank you for doing this. It's really, really helpful.
Yeah, and one of the benefits, that's one of the side benefits, is I get a lot fewer instances of AI writing in my class than I think I'm seeing from some of my colleagues. Some of that is the fact that I start using it right away, and I think that they don't know how to use it as well as I do. And so they think I'm some kind of expert who's going to detect it. That will probably go away in a couple of years, like they'll outpace me. But right now they're convinced that I'm some sort of AI expert who can, who's better at this than they are, and they're going to get caught. But it is worth, they come away from it a lot more literate about this and a lot more aware that they cannot, it's not going to be effective to use it. It's just not a smart tool. Not really, not yet.
There are some times when, like I was reading an essay, and the essay was actually pretty good, pretty detailed. And I almost wish that the student had the unpaid version of Grammarly just to kind of go through and clean it up a little bit. And there are things that I don't think it would have cleaned up. And yesterday, Benny talked about a chat bot. So I was playing with that and making a chat bot for grammar. And I put in, a little snippet and it cleaned up some of it, but some of it didn't. But occasionally I do wish, like, how can we, I don't know. And the student, maybe he was rushed or maybe he's ESL, I'm not quite sure, but there still was that little bit of like, I kind of would have been okay with him running it through something just to clean up the grammar a little bit. Because
Yeah,
that, yeah.
I'm on the border myself about, I know some of our colleagues are completely opposed to Grammarly. I'm on the border myself. And I should say too, I use AI to help them write their papers. I just don't have them let it produce any writing. So they'll submit it. I'll encourage them to submit it and let it do a reverse outline,
Yeah.
analyze, the structure, point out where there's duplications. I built a custom bot that I was hoping it could use, but AI is apparently not faithful. And the second the student said, can you, I told it, do not ever write the paper for the student. And then the student goes, pretty please, my grade depends on it. And then it writes the paper. My lying chatbot. So it won't not write the paper if the students ask pretty please. So I gotta wait until it's better about that. But so it's a tool that we use in class, just not in place of their own thoughts. And that's the main thing. Like, it's a great tool. I love it. I use it for all sorts of things.
How, because I'm teaching online and even when I'm doing face-to-face and online stuff, I feel like it's easier to deal with in face-to-face. Are you dealing with, I don't know what online stuff you're doing now. How have you dealt with it online?
I did the same assignment online.
Okay.
And I suspect that my online students were a lot more older students in the class. And so I had a discussion board and I let them sort of crowdsource their noticing of the logical fallacies, right? So the logical fallacies discussion was done in a discussion board. So those students who weren't getting it at least had somebody else getting it for them. And so if they couldn't spot it, somebody else spotted it and then they wrote about it. And I did a lecture where I walked them through it, and as they put in the discussion boards, I'd say, like, that was a good point. Yes, notice the same one later on. And so that helped. It for using AI in online classes, that's definitely where I see it a lot more. But again, the writing is such poor quality. I haven't even turned them in for plagiarism. I've just, I have a colleague who's not from our campus, but from one of the other sister colleges, who says, she writes, it's giving AI vibes, and just sends it
Oh.
back. And then that's the last she ever hears from it. And just the paper never comes back. It's just giving AI vibes.
I like that. Well, I know I had a student who they were supposed to listen to this audio that has a transcript, and then I have questions, and I can tell that they put in the transcript, asked the questions, and got answers because the writing is too good compared to the other writing that I'm pretty sure she's done, including emails that she's written me. Um, I don't feel like dealing with, I said we need to talk or can we talk? And, I'll just kind of keep an eye out on it. But what about, yeah, the other assignments too? Because I've thought about online, like how I can use it for brainstorming or something, but it feels so much more out of control, but yet I also feel like
Yeah, the reverse outline assignment, I only did in my in-person class. I only gave that to them and said, put your paper into the AI if you're comfortable with that, in my in-person class. I think I did it briefly in one class, and then I took it out the next semester because then they were obviously learning how to use it. And I was like, oh, this is not, There's not enough opportunity to in person sort of control this situation. So yeah, it's definitely a little harder, but I'd rather have them learn about it in a context than just sort of play with it and figure out what they could get away with.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm doing more of a metacognitive research paper for the first one where they're really just focusing on doing the research. And so I was thinking for part of it, maybe I would have them ask ChatGPT for sources after they've found sources and then kind of have them work through that. Like, are they good sources? Are they not? Maybe even put them in a discussion board or something. And so I'm playing with it, but it's the online part I'm a little bit afraid of. So I feel really bad. I'm talking, and Rebecca and I have spoken about this. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, things about maybe how, like David, maybe you've used it, haven't, are thinking about using it? Francesca, Amandeep, Heather, open up the discussion.
Yeah, I was wondering how we can use AI for the math class. I know I'm using for me for to create a problems, but I don't know how I can incorporate in term of students.
Oh gosh, that's gonna be out of my oops.
Well, yes, it is out of mine too, but next semester we are going to do a workshop on AI in math. Lena Obeid is going to give it. We already have a date planned, and I'm going to try and get other STEM people to help with that. So Amandeep, I forget which college you're at, but Lena Obeid uses it, and you might be able to talk to her. And I wish I could give you more information, but I'm not a math
Yeah, who you said? I'm from Madeira. Who you said I can talk to about this?
Lena Obeid.
Yeah.
Whoops, I stuck it to Susie. Hold on, let me put it to everyone. I'll put her name.
Yeah, and I
So we
believe that
are, I might have her name spelled a little bit wrong, but we are going to do more math. Yeah, sorry.
And she is from which college?
Reedley College.
Okay.
Yeah.
and I'll add Julie Kehoe, I know has used it for some things. But I've heard a lot of instructors are using it for like word problem developments for some of the classes where that's appropriate, like stats.
Yeah, I
But
know it's I am using for my stat to create a problem for myself, but I don't know how we can incorporate with the students.
There was a teacher who, it was the last workshop this morning, and he is a chemistry teacher, and he would have the students go in, if I'm remembering correctly, and put in like, can you give me, like, say you're doing like you have a stats quiz coming up. Can you make a stats quiz that I can take? Or something like that. So it created extra practice for the students. I think I'm hoping I'm getting that right. So if your students have a test or something, you might say, like, show them how to go into ChatGPT and maybe make a quiz, like questions to quiz them to prepare them for a test.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea too.
Yeah, that's how he used it for chemistry. But I think it would be good as a class maybe to do that first together as a class if you're in person, and sort of compare the kind of questions that you're getting to sort of see like where the prompt needs to change. And that's a huge thing, I think, is the prompt engineering. But I might play with that idea.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. David, any thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple of mine. I teach ESL, uh, and much along the same lines as Francesca was mentioning, with world languages. I've not had a really good use for it in terms of my students using it in my class, and I have occasionally seen misuse of it, both with transcripts, as you mentioned, Lori. Just today, I was talking with one of our adjunct instructors for some writing assignments she was concerned about. But I think our student population, I think by and large, in the ESL program, they're highly motivated to learn English. And it's just you know, it's just self-destructive if they're using tools like this to produce English. And so it honestly, for most students, it doesn't take much of a conversation to get them on track. Why are you here? What are you trying to accomplish? Because I think ultimately, in terms, I really love what we saw today, in Rebecca's presentation, because I think it's engaging the students into this world that we live in, and I think a year from now, Rebecca will be giving a very different presentation because it'll be different than now. But ultimately, these are not new issues; they're very old. These are primarily issues of ethics, integrity, that we've been dealing with since, you know, since people could hit print and get 2 copies instead of 1. I mean, just those are the fundamental issues, in my view, that we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And then as instructors, we need to be real careful too, because it's easy to say, maybe I'll just have AI generate this letter of recommendation. I've got the resume. And those kind of things, you know,
I
lack
know.
integrity, and we just need to be modeling it and using it wisely. And I don't know, those are my thoughts.
I know someone who used it to help someone with a job application, and I sort of cringed, like write the cover letter, because I also feel like then, and I had a student in one of my classes like a couple of semesters ago who did admit that she used it for a cover letter for a job. But what she realized is one of the paragraphs were okay and the other 2 paragraphs were lies. So she basically had to go and rewrite it anyway. But I could see using it maybe as a place to get ideas or to write something and then ask it to either make it shorter or work on the language or something. But
And if I might point out, I think that's what Rebecca's doing with her students too, using it as a tool to get you closer to the end. But it's not doing the writing. At least that's not what she's allowing.
one teacher this morning talked about how students need to take like responsibility for their learning. And I think that that's a really important thing to say to students nowadays is how are you taking responsibility for your learning if you're just plugging in the prompt and then having AI do it for you?
Yeah, you know what I have to say about all of this is I really find it refreshing that it's requiring people to get back to basics. You know, why are you in your discipline? Why do you love your discipline? Why do you respect your material? Why are you here to communicate it? And so we start our classes by telling our students about that. You know, why are you here? And asking them to make sure that we are on the same page, and to get where you want to go, these are the things we're going to do together. And I just think it's a great treatment for burnout. You know, I think for people who have been doing what they've been doing a long time, this is an opportunity to come back and reset, because it is a moment in culture where there's a big shift. And if we want people to go forward and be enthusiastic and creative and carry where we're going forward, they need to understand who they are as a learner and what they're responsible for. And I just find it super refreshing. So I'm pretty excited about where it's going to take us all as professionals, because I think it will kind of separate the people who care and those who don't. And if you don't care, you know, you're going to ride the wave out. And I had somebody actually tell me in tutor training today that one of the teachers, the way they're dealing with it is in their class, they're doing all of their writing by hand on paper in class. And that's what they're doing. They're just simply avoiding it altogether. And I said, yeah, that's a strategy from yesterday, but that's not going to help them go forward as graduates into the future. What service are we doing if we just say, I don't want to deal with AI? It's just not realistic. And I don't think it's good teaching. So I'm just so glad you're doing this, Lori. Thank you.
Well, thank Rebecca for.
Yeah.
Do you have any last words, Rebecca, of Was
No,
some
I think Deb said it really well, honestly, that this is, it is an opportunity to really just lean into the basics of your various disciplines, and the students either learn from it, or and not worry so much about the cheating aspect. Worry more about what they can learn using these tools.
Yep.
That's a really good point. Just a reminder, there are more workshops next week. Patrick, who is our learning specialist, is going to talk about AI for accessing universal design, which universal design, I'm learning more about it, which is really important. Melanie, who is from Clovis, is going to be talking about other assignments to help students and faculty use AI. She does AI with her class too. We have Julie Gant, our student panel, who is going to talk about their experiences with AI. So hopefully I'm looking forward to that. And then we have Julie Gamberg, who is going to talk about ethical considerations in using AI. And Claire Fisher just got to me her topic. It looks fabulous, but I cannot remember what it was. So there will be something in our Reedley College Monday morning roundup. And then all this information has been sent to Fresno City and Clovis and Madera. So thank you all for attending. I hope to see you next week. And there is that little survey. Don't forget about that. Just gives me some more information. Thank you, Rebecca. And that is all. That's all, folks. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you. Have a good weekend.